Hello, welcome to Capital Sensei. Let's talk a little about the most misunderstood and powerful tool for building wealth: boredom. It may sound strange, but learning to be bored is a critical step toward financial prosperity. And we're going to explore exactly how this mental state can unlock your creative and financial potential. If you have any personal stories about how a moment of quiet led to a breakthrough idea, or any questions about this concept, please share them in the comments below. We read through them and do our best to respond to all comments, as your experiences are valuable to our entire community. We are going to delve into the science of why our brains are wired to hate boredom, how modern technology has effectively destroyed this essential state of mind, and why that is secretly keeping you from achieving your financial goals. The single most impactful piece of information you need to grasp right now is this: your smartphone, the device you use to escape even a moment of idleness, is actively shutting down the part of your brain responsible for generating innovative, wealth-creating ideas. By constantly distracting yourself, you are robbing yourself of your most powerful financial asset: your own creativity. You will have less money and you will be more financially stressed if you are never bored. That statement might seem counterintuitive in a world that glorifies constant hustle and productivity, but the evidence for it is becoming overwhelmingly clear. Let's first examine the positive side of boredom from a neurological perspective. When you are not cognitively occupied with a task, like scrolling through social media, answering emails, or listening to a podcast, your brain doesn't just turn off. Instead, it switches to a different operational state, activating a set of interconnected brain structures known as the default mode network. That name might sound technical, but its function is quite simple to understand. The default mode network is what turns on when you have nothing else to actively think about. It's the system that engages when you've forgotten your phone and you're just sitting at a long red light, or when you're waiting in a line with no distractions. This is your brain's creative engine, its internal brainstorming workshop. It's where disparate thoughts, memories, and ideas collide to form novel concepts. It is, quite literally, where financial genius is born. However, we are biologically programmed to dislike this state. We find it uncomfortable, even agonizing. My colleague in the psychology department at Harvard, Dan Gilbert, conducted a fascinating series of experiments that perfectly illustrate this aversion. Participants were asked to sit alone in a room for 15 minutes with a single instruction: do absolutely nothing. The room was empty, offering no distractions. There was, however, one object available: a button. If a participant pushed this button, they would administer a painful electric shock to themselves. The choice was simple: sit there and be bored, or get a shock. A significant majority of the participants, particularly men, chose to give themselves at least one painful electric shock rather than sit quietly with their own thoughts. This reveals a profound truth about human nature. We desperately avoid boredom, even to the point of choosing physical pain over mental stillness. Why is boredom so profoundly uncomfortable? Because the default mode network doesn't just let our minds go blank. It encourages our minds to wander. And when our minds wander, they don't always go to pleasant, easy places. They drift towards the big, unresolved questions in our lives. What is my real purpose? Am I on the right career path? How can I solve my persistent money problems? Am I truly building a life of significance? You are forced to confront uncomfortable, existential, and practical questions when you're bored. This internal audit can feel unsettling, which is why we instinctively reach for a distraction to quell the discomfort. The modern world has provided us with the ultimate tool for this escape. The digital pacifier in our pocket offers an endless stream of dopamine hits, a constant barrage of notifications, videos, and headlines designed by teams of engineers to be maximally addictive. This isn't an accident, it's a business model. Your attention is the product, and the price you pay is your own capacity for deep, creative thought. Yet, engaging with these difficult questions is precisely what is necessary for growth, especially financial growth. It turns out that this discomfort is incredibly important, incredibly productive. One of the reasons we are seeing an explosion of financial anxiety in our society today is because people have stopped giving themselves the mental space to truly analyze their financial situations and brainstorm creative solutions. The data on rising debt levels, financial stress, and feelings of economic hopelessness are clear. People feel trapped, and a key reason is that they are not even looking for a way out in the most effective way possible. They are instead sedating their financial anxiety with digital distractions, which only compounds the problem. The opportunity cost is staggering. Every hour you spend mindlessly scrolling through social media is an hour you did not spend conceptualizing a side hustle, mapping out an investment strategy, or finding a creative way to cut your expenses. That hour of consumption could have been an hour of creation, potentially worth thousands of dollars down the line. Why aren't people looking for these solutions? I will tell you precisely why. We have engineered a world where it is possible to completely eliminate boredom. We have become masters at shutting off the default mode network in our brains, silencing our own creative potential before it even has a chance to speak. The tool for this self-sabotage is that glowing rectangle in your pocket. That device you pull out the second you're standing on a street corner waiting for the light to change. You might only have to wait for 15 seconds, but the impulse to fill that tiny gap of inactivity is overwhelming. What are you doing in that moment? You are actively preventing yourself from being bored because the default mode network is mildly uncomfortable. It sends you to the types of complex problems and big questions that you can't easily get your arms around. Like, how do I create an extra stream of income? Or is my current investment strategy actually going to work? This creates a devastating doom loop of financial mediocrity. If every single time you have a moment of quiet, a moment where a genuinely innovative financial idea could sprout, you instead pull out your phone to consume content, you will find it progressively harder to generate wealth. You become a consumer of other people's ideas rather than a creator of your own solutions. This is the perfect recipe for financial stagnation, a sense of being stuck, and the very hollowness that plagues so many people who feel they are working hard but getting nowhere. Consider the story of a man we will call Mark. Mark worked in middle management at a large corporation, earned a decent salary, but felt financially stuck. His income was stagnant, his expenses were rising, and he saw no clear path to true financial independence. Every day, his commute on the train was filled with podcasts about entrepreneurship and videos about stock trading. He was consuming vast amounts of information, but taking no action. One day, his phone died halfway through his morning commute. For the first time in years, he had 30 minutes with absolutely nothing to do but stare out the window. Initially, he felt a wave of anxiety, but as the train moved through the city, he started to actually observe his surroundings. He noticed the sheer number of small, independent businesses, cafes, bakeries, small retail shops, and he saw how many of them had poor or non-existent online presences. His mind, now free from external input and operating in the default mode network, began to connect the dots. He possessed a decade of marketing experience from his corporate job. These small businesses had a clear need for affordable, effective digital marketing. The problem he was observing outside the window connected with the solution he possessed internally. In that single, boring commute, the idea for a subscription-based digital marketing agency for small local businesses was born. He spent the rest of the ride sketching out a business model on a napkin. That idea, born from a dead phone battery and a moment of farce boredom, became a side hustle that eventually replaced his corporate salary and set him on the path to becoming a millionaire. This principle doesn't just apply to creating new businesses. Consider another example, a woman named Sarah, who was overwhelmed by credit card debt. She spent her evenings stressed, often distracting herself with streaming services to avoid thinking about her financial predicament. One weekend, during a power outage, she was forced to wash her dishes by hand, in silence. As she performed the mundane, repetitive task, her mind began to wander to her debt problem. Instead of the usual panic, the default mode network started to work differently. It wasn't just seeing the problem, it was looking for a novel solution. She started to think about the problem like a game. What if she broke down her largest debt into tiny, manageable levels? What if she created a visual chart where she could color in a block for every $100 she paid off, giving herself a small, non-monetary reward for each level completed? She conceptualized a whole system for gamifying her debt repayment, a creative and motivating strategy that made the daunting task feel achievable. This innovative approach, born from the boredom of washing dishes in the dark, gave her the motivation she needed to aggressively tackle her debt and achieve financial freedom years earlier than she had thought possible. I understand the impulse. You don't want to be bored. It feels unproductive. But the truth is, you need to be bored if you want to be rich. You need to strategically incorporate boredom into your life. Try an experiment. Tomorrow, when you go to the gym, leave your phone in the locker. Can you handle it? No podcast, no music, just you and your thoughts while you work out. Just being in your own head. I promise you, some of your most interesting and actionable financial ideas will come to you in those moments. You will start connecting dots you never saw before. It's probably been a very long time since you've allowed yourself that kind of mental space. Try commuting to work with nothing. Not the radio, not an audiobook, just silence. Can you do that? Start by mastering periods of 15 minutes of intentional boredom. Then stretch it to 20, then 30. Watch how your financial life begins to change. There are two primary benefits to this practice. First, you will become less bored with the ordinary, essential tasks of your life. By building your tolerance for stillness, you'll find more engagement in your job, which can lead to better performance and promotions. You'll be more present in your relationships, which reduces stress and the desire for costly retail therapy. You'll become more observant of the world around you, which is the foundation of identifying business opportunities. But more importantly, you will finally start digging into the biggest financial questions in your life. Questions of purpose, strategy, opportunity, and significance. How can I turn my skills into a side business? What is a problem in my community that I could solve for a profit? How can I restructure my budget to free up capital for a serious investment? Who knows? By asking these questions in a state of focused boredom, you might just get richer. To make this practice more concrete, try implementing an idea quota. Challenge yourself to use your scheduled boredom time to generate, for example, 3 new side hustle ideas per week, or 1 new savings hack. Keep a dedicated boredom journal and immediately write down any ideas that surface during these quiet times. no matter how impractical they may seem at first. The goal is to train your creative muscle. People often ask me if I practice what I preach. The answer is an unequivocal yes. I am just as prone to the pathologies of distraction as anyone else because my brain has the same chemical reward system. So, I have to be intentional about fighting it. I have a strict no-device policy after 7 o'clock in the evening. I do not sleep with my phone in the bedroom. It charges in another room. In my family, we have no devices at the table during meals. We are there to connect with each other, not with people who are not physically present. These moments of connection also serve as pockets of unstimulated time for our minds to process the day. Furthermore, I practice regular social media and screen cleanses. These are periods, sometimes a full weekend, where I do not use my devices for anything other than essential communication. The first few hours are always difficult. It feels like children screaming in my head, which is the sensation of my brain's dopamine system craving its usual fix. It is the feeling of withdrawal from an addiction. But after a while, that frantic energy calms down, and a sense of clarity and peace takes its place. By the end of the cleanse, I feel refreshed and my mind is buzzing with new ideas and solutions to problems that seemed intractable before. When I eventually pick up my phone again, because I do have to check emails and be a connected person in the modern world, the experience reminds me that my life and my success do not have to revolve around these devices. These protocols are incredibly helpful, and I recommend them to anyone serious about improving their financial situation. Do not sleep with your phone. No phones during meals. Practice regular digital fasts. Your financial health will improve. A common objection people raise is the fear of missing something important, an emergency. People worry that if they disconnect, they'll be unreachable if a crisis occurs. There are simple technological remedies for this. You can set your phone to a mode where you are not looking at it, but 1 or 2 specific numbers, say from your spouse or your child's school, can still get through. Modern phones can easily be configured this way. If you don't know how, ask your kid or a tech-savvy friend. Do not use the flimsy excuse of emergencies to justify a constant, wealth-destroying state of distraction. Let's be clear about what does not constitute an emergency. What is happening on Twitter is not an emergency. The latest political outrage is not an emergency. A flash sale at an online store is not an emergency. The news cycle can wait. Seriously, your grandparents built their lives and their wealth without knowing what was happening every single second in the nation's capital. You are crippling your financial future with this constant influx of irrelevant, anxiety-inducing information. It is unequivocally bad for your financial well-being. So let me say it as clearly as I can, to my own children and to you. Put down your phones. You need more creative financial ideas in your life. You need to build more wealth. And so do I.